basilica of Justinian's time is the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. Following the revolt in 532, Justinian had two Greek mathematicians, Antimaeus of Tralles and Isidorus of Miletus, plan the Hagia Sophia. Their design included a basilica plan with enormous rising vaults. The central dome was placed above four arches at right angles to each other and supported by four huge piers. The piers themselves were supported by buttresses. The dome rests on four pendentives or triangle segments with concave sides. These pendentives were seen as the major Byzantine contribution to the Hagia Sophia. The dome was constructed from a single layer of brick that lessened the weight being held by the pendentives. The exterior of the basilica has 40 small windows, all strengthened by small buttresses. The extensive amount of windows and arcades generates a huge amount of light and space. The church was also richly decorated with mosaics that depicted the Virgin Mother, Jesus, saints, or emperors and empresses. Other parts were ornamented in a purely decorative style with geometric patterns. This church illustrates Justinian's mission to unite his people under Christendom and commissioned works that furthered his mission to be Christ's representative on earth. The mosaics of Justinian and Theodora are mosaics located on the apse in San Vitale, Ravenna, Italy. These are classic examples of art as propaganda. Power on earth was once, and sometimes even now, perceived as a result of power in heaven. The great double mosaic of Justinian and Theodora at San Vitale is a forceful exercise in demonstrating power and fusing political and religious imagery for a double statement of authority. In the 6th century, many intellectual Christians would have found these mosaics hubristic. Even the cynical could have found these mosaics troubling. Yet there are at least 3 possible reasons why this propaganda was justifiable for a Byzantine ruler. The mosaics here are perhaps the greatest of early Byzantine, if not all post-Roman mosaics. They do serve as an embellishment to reinforce the grandeur of Justinian, perhaps simultaneously last Roman emperor and first Byzantine emperor. There is much debate over whether these mosaics were considered iconography or a biography of the rulers. Stylistically, the illusion of movement is created by repetition and elaborate colorful patterns rather than the figures turning freely in space. The importance of light in Christian art is expressed in Byzantine mosaics such as these by the gold backgrounds and the reflective surfaces of the tesserae. This corresponds with the scripture as Christ is referred to as the light of the world. The halos of both figures emphasize their combined roles as earthly and spiritual leaders. Even though they are both rulers, Theodora, of course, is further back in the space than Justinian, signifying her subordination. The emphasis on rank and hierarchy rather than personality or portraiture reflects the highly structured nature of Byzantine society. The symbolic character of these images is evident not only in their style and iconography, but also in the virtual absence of any reference to the biographies of the rulers. Since Justinian had never been to Ravenna, his mosaic had great political importance, serving as a reminder and substitute of its power. The Dome of the Rock is a shrine, the earliest example of an Islamic sanctuary, located in Jerusalem. The Temple Mount area where the Dome of the Rock is located is important to not only Muslims who control it now, but also to Jews and Christians. As the place where the Jewish temple once stood, the Temple Mount is considered to be the holiest place in Judaism, and is the place where Jews and some Christians believe that the third and final temple will be built. This area is also the third holiest site in Islam. Because of its importance to both Jews and Muslims, the Temple Mount area is a highly contested religious site over which there is still much tension. Despite these tensions, the Dome of the Rock effortlessly combines Islamic styling, the Christian centrally planned octagon, and includes Byzantine, Persian, and other Middle Eastern ornamentations. The exterior of the building is faced with marble and mosaics in the shape of geometric patterns, which are stylistic of Islamic art and are reflective of the prayer pattern that Muslims follow every day. The gilded dome can be seen from miles away during the day and reflects the sun in every direction, creating a sense of otherworldly awe, much like the mosaics in early Christian and Byzantine churches. The purpose of this splendid building was to distract Muslims from the Christian buildings in Jerusalem and prevent them from seeing beauty and splendor in monuments built by other faiths because they were too focused on the richness and complexity of the Dome of the Rock. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, also called the Basilica of the Holy Sepulchre, or the Church of the Resurrection by Eastern Christians, is a church within the Christian quarter of the walled Old City of Jerusalem. The site is venerated as Golgotha, where Jesus was crucified, and is said also to contain the place where Jesus was buried. The church has been a paramount, and for many Christians the most important pilgrimage destination since at least the 4th century, as the purported site of the resurrection of Jesus. The building was damaged by fire in 614 when the Persians invaded Jerusalem and captured the cross. In 630, Emperor Heraclius marched triumphantly into Jerusalem and restored the true cross to the rebuilt Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Under the Muslims, it remained a Christian church. The early Muslim rulers protected the city's Christian sites, prohibiting their destruction and their uses as living quarters. In 966, the doors and roof were burnt during a riot. On October 18, 1009, Fatimid Caliph Al-Hakim bi Amri Allah ordered the complete destruction of the church. European reaction was of shock and dismay, with far-reaching and intense consequences. Ultimately, this destruction provided an impetus for the later Crusades. The Crusaders investigated the eastern ruins on the site, occasionally excavating through the rubble, and while attempting to reach the cistern, they discovered part of the original ground level of Hadrian's temple enclosure. They decided to transform the space into a chapel dedicated to Helena, widening their original excavation tunnel into a proper staircase. The Crusaders began to refurnish the church in a Romanesque style and added a bell tower. These renovations unified the small chapels on the site and were completed during the reign of Queen Melisende in 1149, placing all the holy places under one roof for the first time. On the south side of the altar via the ambulatory is a stairway climbing to Calvary, traditionally regarded as the site of Jesus' crucifixion and the most lavishly decorated part of the church. The main altar there belongs to the Greek Orthodox, which contains the Rock of Calvary. The rock can be seen under glass on both sides of the altar, and beneath the altar there is a hole said to be the place where the cross was raised. Due to the significance of this, it is the most visited site in the Holy Sepulchre. St. Foy is the earliest surviving of a pilgrimage church and is dedicated to St. Foy, a 3rd century virgin martyr. She was martyred in 303 while still a child because she refused to worship pagan gods. In the 9th century, her relics were transported to Conques, which is the single most important attraction for the pilgrims. They were contained in an elaborate gold reliquary statue. The figure is made of gold repoussé, with several sheets of gold placed over a wooden chair for stability. The saint sits frontally, as if enthroned, wearing a martyr's crown and rich gold robe covered with gems. Since the church attracted many pilgrims, the builders had to make plans to accommodate large crowds without interfering with the clergy duties. The traditional basilica plan was modified by extending the side aisles around the transept and the apse to form an ambulatory. This allowed the visitors to circulate freely, leaving the monks undisturbed as they were performing their duties. Essentially, this new plan accommodated two social systems. One was based on the social word for the laity, while the other provided an architectural space for those whose daily lives followed another order of business and a liturgical calendar. St. Pierre is an abbey and church which was founded in the 7th century but destroyed and rebuilt several times. The Romanesque sections that survived are the cloister, the remains of the lower walls of the church, the south porch, and the tower. The most important Romanesque sculptures are on the south porch entrance. The tympanum over the south portal is filled with reliefs depicting the second coming of Christ based on Revelation. However, the artist has eliminated the theological connection between the second coming and the last judgment, so there is no depiction of the damned and the saved. Instead, Christ is shown in glory. This makes the whole church much more inviting by focusing on his glory instead of the damning of souls. Another new aspect was the trumeau, a surface on which Romanesque artists carved sculptures. These figures were even more elongated than the norm because of the need to fit into the thin, vertical architectural rectangle in which they were located. Some of the acknowledged reliefs in St. Pierre are St. Paul and Abbot Durand, both which have these characteristics. This abbey became a major stage on the Via Podiensis, one of the major pilgrimage routes. Not only is the abbey known for its incredible sculptural program, but in the medieval period in the scriptoria, the scribes and illuminators were creating manuscripts of great beauty and fame. This wealthy and important monastery had its greatest influence during the 11th and 12th centuries. One of the most intriguing Romanesque works is the Bayeux Tapestry, which depicts the Norman invasion of England in 1066, led by William, Duke of Normandy, against Harold, future King of England. The word tapestry is used loosely, as it is an embroidered cloth and not an actual tapestry. The tapestry consists of around 50 scenes with Latin inscriptions embroidered on linen with colored woolen yarns. It is likely that it was commissioned by Bishop Odo, William's half-brother, and made in England, not Bayeux, in the 1070s. The tapestry's central zone contains most of the action, which sometimes overflows into the borders either for dramatic effect or because depictions would otherwise be very cramped. Events take place in a longer series of scenes, which are generally separated by highly stylized trees. However, the trees are not placed consistently, and the greatest scenes shift between Harold's audience with Edward and after his return to England, and Edward's burial scene is not marked in any way at all. Unlike the other Romanesque works of art, the Bayeux Tapestry is secular in subject, and while they depict a historical event, they are told from the point of view of the Normans. While the Latin text helps to explain the images, much of the narrative is transmitted through the pictures themselves, and many of the details remain puzzling.